Hello, tonight our lesson is on congruent figures. Let's start by defining what we mean by the word congruent. The word congruent means equal. So when we talk about congruent figures, we're talking about figures that are the same in their size and shape. All right, so if two figures are congruent, then they are equal in size and they're equal in shape. And here's an example of two congruent pentagons. Same size, same shape. So far in our geometry section, we've been working on rigid transformations. And in those rigid transformations, we have been taking figures that remain the same size and the same shape. So they're congruent. And we've been translating them or sliding them across a coordinate plane. We've also been rotating them and reflecting them. So here we have a triangle PRQ, and it's being translated to a different position. But notice that it is still congruent. The sides are the same length, and the angles correspond to one another. Here, angle P is the same as this little angle right here, P prime. And then R corresponds with this R, Q corresponds with this Q. And in this example, we have congruent figures, and it's not being translated, but what's happening? It's not being reflected. That's right, it's being rotated. All right, so it's being rotated about the point F. So see how point F is fixed, but D and E are changing position. They're being rotated. It looks like, if I had to guess, I'd say maybe it's being rotated 45 degrees, maybe 50 degrees, something like that. Half a turn, half a 90-degree angle. All right, so this is what we've been doing with our rigid transformations. We've been taking congruent figures and just moving them around. All right, here we have two congruent figures. These both happen to be trapezoids. And we can see that this first figure here is identical to the second figure, except it's just facing the different direction. So imagine taking the first shape and rotating it about a fixed point, so that we rotate it 180 degrees like this. Then it would be facing the same direction as our second shape. It would look like this. All right? And so imagine then that we did that. We rotated it around a fixed point. That means that now point A, when we rotate it, it would be here. D would be there. And then C would be here. And B would be there. Okay, can you imagine that? Now, I'm going to identify the corresponding sides and corresponding angles. So here, side DC on the first shape would correspond to side FE on the second shape. And I would show that by writing DC and put a little line over the top. That indicates a side. Okay, it's a little line segment. And that's going to correspond to side FE, like that. And since they're congruent or equal in length, we use a little squiggly sign with an equal sign below it. That means congruent, which in geometry terms means equal in value or equal in length. All right, so let's write the rest of the corresponding sides. Here we have this side right here, side AB, is going to correspond to GH, and they're congruent. And then we have side DA is corresponding to FG, and they're congruent. And then side CB corresponds to EH. All right, so these are the corresponding sides. Now, the corresponding angles would be the corners of our shape that are identical to each other in value. Okay, so here I have angle D corresponds to angle F. It's congruent, they're the same measurement. Angle A corresponds to angle G. And that little upside down 7, that's the symbol for an angle. All right, so this little symbol right here, that means that we're talking about an angle. And so let's see, we have angle E, that would correspond to angle C. And finally we have angle H that corresponds to angle B. All right, okay, so let's try another one. All right, let's list the corresponding sides and angles for these two triangles. All right, so this time they're both facing the same direction, so we don't have to worry about rotating them around. All right, so here we have, let's start with the sides. All right, now this time we could call that side CB, like we did in the previous example, but in this example we have letters to represent the lengths of each side. So we can just say that side A corresponds and is congruent to side D, like that. So A is congruent to D. Side B corresponds to F. They're congruent. And then side C and side E correspond to one another. Now our corresponding angles, angle A is congruent and corresponds to angle D. All right, angle B right here corresponds to F. And then angle C is congruent to angle E. Okay? Okay. Go ahead and pause your video. I want you to list the corresponding sides and the corresponding angles for the two triangles. So pause your video and then restart it when you have your answers ready to check. Welcome back from pausing the video. Alright, so let's start with, first of all, it looks like these are mirror images of one another, right? So if I had, let's say, my line of reflection going right between them, since they're mirror images, that means that this side right here, JM, if I was to reflect it to the other side here, that would correspond to side PR. So JM and PR correspond to one another. And it looks like they're congruent. We don't have any measurements to prove it, but we'll just go ahead and make that assumption. We have side MK would correspond to RQ. And then here we have JK corresponds to PQ. So those are the corresponding sides. Now our angles, we have angle J, it would be the same and corresponds to angle P. Angle M corresponds to angle R, and then angle K corresponds to angle Q. Okay, so how'd you do? Okay, very good. Thank you for listening and taking notes. And remember, read some books.